Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the efforts that Mr. Jimenez and Correa are doing here to acknowledge the critical work of the Department of Homeland Security to actually secure our country. Having a military background myself, I mean, the Joint Task Force model has worked for this country, and there's no reason that it shouldn't work to continue to help what the Joint Task Force states here is to lead the DHS law enforcement effort to target, dismantle, and disrupt transnational criminal organizations, among other things. And so, as we look at the situation on the southern border, we are in complete chaos. There is a chaotic situation since President Biden took office with 4 million illegal immigrants coming across the southern border. The Joint Task Force is incredibly important. When you look at the number of known or suspected terror matches in this fiscal year, I believe it's 66 as of the last report that we received. 66 people who have come across the border who match the known or suspected terror watch list, who are threatening our country. And so thank you to Mr. Correa, to Mr. Jimenez for acknowledging and looking at the problem. And I allowed the efforts to actually put some meat on the bone and get together and figure out how we can stop it. I wonder if the Joint Task Force East leader would say that our border is secure. I wonder what the JTF East commander would say to that. Would they actually say that 4 million people, 66 on the terror watch list, 100,000 deaths due to fentanyl, is a secure border? I don't think so. Mr. Chairman, I have a question for you, knowing that we're in this markup right now and we're looking at this Reauthorization Act. Again, I appreciate reauthorizing the JTF East. Mr. Chairman, when can we have a field hearing to bring all the JTFs together to get the inputs this year? Are you willing to have a hearing in Del Rio, Texas, Uvalde, Texas, to bring the JTFs together and to hear their thoughts on whether or not the border is secure?
Well, there's only one JTTF, and I don't have a problem doing it. It's the East model. Mr. Correa and Jimenez's bill is to expand it. So the gentleman will send me a letter. We'll absolutely consider it.
Well, I appreciate it. I will submit that, and I believe that we should ask DHS Secretary Mayorkas to be present, and that your committee, Mr. Chairman, should hold a hearing about border security, and it should include transnational criminal organizations and any terror aspects, because what we are going through in Texas is unacceptable and it's not secure. With that, I yield back. As I sit here and listen to the discussions about climate change and about how it affects our country and then therefore affecting the Homeland Security piece of it, I can't help but put myself in the shoes of people in Menard County or in Kimball County, Texas, or pretty much in any other county of the United States, thinking about the root causes of what is actually impacting our national security, what is actually impacting our Homeland Security. And I've already mentioned the 4 million plus people who have come across this border illegally since President Biden took office. But it's kind of unbelievable to me that we're going to continue in the Committee on Homeland Security a discussion. If we really want to look at the impacts on the environment, I would invite the committee to come look at the environment, to come see the environment that has been broken up and trashed and burned down, in some cases farmhouses or farmlands, because of the problem of 4 million people coming across the border. And unfortunately, this committee has sadly failed to really address the real security threats that we are facing. Hearing after hearing, markup after markup, we have yet to put forward a comprehensive set of solutions that our country in crisis is actually facing. And while I appreciate every effort as a kid who grew up in a ranching family, we care about the environment very much. We leave the land better than when we found it. That is something that anybody who is in agriculture knows. But DHS needs to be focused and needs to be addressing the issues that are actually facing Homeland Security, the threats that are facing Homeland Security, and mitigating the massive influx of people. And an actual and concrete environmental issue is how illegal border crossings are affecting our border communities, because they are. You know, just 2 weeks ago, I had a constituent tell me that they're afraid to go to their property on the border. It's trashed. They've had fences cut. I've introduced legislation to try to repay them. We should be asking the question about what the actual cost is when it comes to the litter, when it comes to the burning down of farmhouses, when it comes to the destruction of personal property, when it comes to the actual environmental impacts. There are many reports describing significant accumulation of garbage along the Rio Grande River Valley. And this includes discarded clothing. I've been there. I've been under the bridge in Del Rio, Texas. I've seen the trash and the litter that is everywhere. So if we're looking at environmental aspects, when it comes to cattle and when it comes to other livestock and farming, we should be looking at this kind of aspect. Of course, much of this trash is left to private landowners. They've got to pick it up. They have to do something that is now charged to them at their own expense. And like I said, I've spoken to many farmers and ranchers along through the Rio Grande Valley and along the southern border in West Texas. Not only are they scared to be on their property because of the physical threat to them, but they also have showed me pictures of their own property being destroyed, either through littering or through some other means of vandalism or crime. And in a lot of cases, Mr. Chairman, I'll say this, they report bodies on their property. That when we look at the real issues that the cartels and the criminal organizations are bringing across, it's almost impossible. So when we say that we're going to ask Homeland Security and we're going to blame the problems on climate, I have a hard time understanding the focus of this committee when in reality, what we need to be doing is addressing the real impacts that are happening right this second. We've had major weather patterns for centuries, and we will continue. Anybody who's lived in my area knows that droughts and storms have long been a part of that area in that region. But now we have the added issue of having to pick up the trash and look at the vandalism. And so my amendment is pretty simple. The department needs to report back to the committee on the extent of economic damage that's being incurred from illegal activity. It needs to look at that. In my opinion, we need to be looking at how we can repay those farmers and ranchers. And with that, I yield back. Well, I'll start by saying that I at least appreciate the debate that we are able to have here. I oppose my colleague from New York's amendment, Ms. Clark, to my amendment because it actually has been mischaracterized grossly. And I have not asked in no way, shape, or form for any sort of study on climate change as it relates to the Homeland Security impacts that I am talking about along our southern border. My amendment is very clear. I would like the Department of Homeland Security to look at the impact of people on the lands along the southwest border. It's very simple. And to my knowledge, there is no issue on the northern border that even comes close to the issue that we're talking about. And it was said very eloquently by my colleague, Mr. Guest. What in the world are we talking about with regards to climate change as it impacts Homeland Security? We're missing the mark, and the American public is demanding that we actually have a debate on Homeland Security, that we actually talk about the people who are impacting our communities, that we talk about the trash caused by human activity illegally crossing the southern border, millions of people into places like the state of Texas. This has nothing to do with climate change. When it comes to the southwest border, it has to do with the people that not only with their dead bodies being littered across private lands, but also the trash and the burning down of structures. My amendment simply asks DHS not only for the resources that are due the farmers and ranchers in South Texas and in West Texas, but also to specifically focus on the issue at hand, the one that is tangible in front of our faces right now, that we can see every single day. And Mr. Chairman, that's actually why I asked you to commit to coming to Del Rio, Texas, or to Laredo, Texas, or to Eagle Pass, Texas. To my knowledge, we have not had a full committee hearing on border security yet. And it would be really nice for this committee to address the issues that are impacting us, the 100,000 people in this country who have been killed by fentanyl over the past year. The activity, the criminal activity, the sheriff's departments and the police departments and the local law enforcement agencies that are having to literally pick up the trash. That's the environmental issue. My amendment doesn't need any help. The people in South Texas and in West Texas, they need help from the federal government to pick up the trash that's being left because of the surge of illegal immigrants who are coming across the southern border, making it difficult and in some cases impossible for them to do their jobs, to grow their crops, to raise their livestock, or in some cases because of the physical threat to them to actually go to their property. I oppose the amendment offered to my amendment by Mrs. Clark. I appreciate the debate that we're actually able to have and to rebut a comment that was made previously by my colleague from Texas. We have not had that debate. We have not had a bipartisan effort because the debate has not been had in the 117th Congress. We need to sit down and have that debate. We need to go to the locations that I'm talking about. And let's figure out the facts. And if climate change is causing the 4 million plus illegal immigrants, well, let's find those facts out. But I think the American public deserves better. With that, I yield back.
Gentleman,
Thank you, Mr.
yields
Chairman.
back.
Well, unfortunately, here we go again. You know, we had every opportunity in this markup, like I've mentioned in other markups, to actually talk about the things that are impacting our homeland security. And while I'm glad that we're looking at a resolution of inquiry, what we should be doing right now is meeting in Del Rio, Texas, or in Eagle Pass. What we should be doing is talking to Border Patrol agents, all of us, in a bipartisan way, asking the hard questions that I have asked, that many of my colleagues on our side of the aisle have asked. Unfortunately, we keep blaming climate change and whatever else for illegal immigration. You know, just since this hearing has started this morning, there have been probably thousands of people who have crossed the border illegally just this morning. You know, since the president took office, 4.2 million illegal immigrants have crossed the border. That is 13% of the size of Texas, almost double the size of Houston, Texas. Billions of dollars have been spent by Texans because the federal government has abdicated, completely abdicated their responsibility, have abandoned my community and so many other communities. And we have had to spend billions of dollars repairing the damage, accounting for the fentanyl deaths, treating people in hospitals. The list goes on and on and on. July was the 17th straight month with more than 150,000 encounters, a trend that has never happened. It's never happened before in our history. In fiscal year 22, CBP has already arrested 22,375 individuals attempting to cross the border with criminal convictions, 600 plus known gang members, and 256 of those are MS-13. We've already talked about the 66 people who match up to the terror watch list when only a handful were required to orchestrate 9/11. And coming off the 21st anniversary of 9/11, have we forgotten? It is this committee's responsibility to go and see with our own eyes, not just Republicans. It's this committee's responsibility, Mr. Chairman, for all of us to go and to see. When I hear the vice president say in an interview this past week that the border is secure. I wonder how many of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle on this committee agree with that. And Mr. Chairman, I am happy to yield anytime to anybody who can explain to me why Vice President Harris told Chuck Todd that the border is secure. We know that that's false. To the Vice President's credit, I think it keeps in line with the narrative that continues, the narrative that says that all of America's woes will be blamed on right-wing or semi-fascist members of Congress. Completely false. I'd like to take this committee to Val Verde County. I'd like to take this committee to Eagle Pass. I'd like to take this committee to the Rio Grande Valley, to talk to the farmers and the ranchers, to talk to the local populations, to hear business owners and community members and school principals, hospital administrators, police officers and sheriff's departments talking about what the Biden administration's policies and lack of political will have done to their communities. If you spent 30 minutes talking about it, we would not be having another markup that didn't address border security. We would absolutely be addressing it. We would be looking at the root causes. We would be understanding why it's so important that this committee do its job. And I've said it before, but the American public is demanding answers. The American public deserves for us to have that hearing and to talk to those agents and to understand why 100,000 people have died from fentanyl, to talk to the families and the parents. And it was suggested that kids are being separated, or in a previous administration, nonsense. Last year in my district, over 700 unaccompanied minors were put into a camp. And the reason they were is because they're being separated by the cartels, by the people who are trafficking them and profiting to the tune of billions of dollars. That is who is separating them. But they're incentivized by Biden's policies. They're incentivized by the lack of political will to secure our border, the most important thing. And instead, we're talking about climate change. We need to wake up and do our jobs, and we need to secure our border. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back.